Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So, trying to get this one wrapped up. So we have the front hub carriers and hubs and the rear hubs. So, nice blue anodized aluminium to match the rest of the suspension parts we've been putting on. So, let's crack on with this one and see if we can get the aluminium suspension upgrades finished. So let's have a look what we get with this kit. So we've got two of the hubs. We then get two hub carriers with the little nylon inserts in them. We've got four bearings, so you get set bearings with it. And strangely enough, seems though we didn't get the screws we needed with the other parts, you get two locking nuts and two screws. So first thing we're going to do is start with the right hand side. So let's get the wheel nut off. So once the wheel nut's off, we're going to want to remove the hinge pin. Right, so let's try a 17mm spanner on it. Unlike as Armour RCs, it's not thread locked to an inch its life. So once you back the pin out a little bit, you can then take that off. We can see the drive shaft. So next thing we're going to want to remove, we're going to be taking out the screw that holds the steering. Yeah. We got a little locking nut on the back of that one. So then we can remove the upper and the lower pin that holds the hub in place, or the hub carrier. And that should let the whole hub assembly come out. Once we've got this out, you can remove the drive shaft, and one of the bearings just falls out. So next we're going to have to remove the bolts that hold it on, and these are 3mm hex. And I'm not sure if these have got a little bit of thread lock on them, or if it's just corrosion from the cheap metal that the hub's made out of. It does look like a bit of thread lock. So that is basically how it's going to sit. So we need to match that up with one of those new ones. I don't think it's going to be that one. Looks like it should be that one. So if we then remove the old hub, and you should have an insert in the top and the bottom. So I believe we should be able to reuse these in the new hub assembly. Then we're going to want our steering arm for the right hand side, so you can just match them up. Looks similar diameter but not exact. So let's have a look, see if there's any difference in the bearings. No, they look exact, so I'm going to reuse the original bearings because there's nothing wrong with them, if they'll fit. Yep, it does look like the bearing will fit, so we'll just drop that one in. Then we'll remove the one from the existing hub. Now this is going to be interesting. So we're going to need to position that and then sit this inside, and then I'm going to get a tiny bit of thread lock. Because we don't want as hinge pins coming loose or as king pins. So I'm just going to use a tiny bit. Just going to get that started. Then we're going to want a little bit of thread lock on the other side, so we can then get these tightened up. And that's nice and free, no binding. So we're then going to want to place our drive shaft back in. And let's get this back into position. So it does come with a nut and bolt, and looking at it, it seems like it's for this top one. Yeah. So just be careful when you're tightening this up. You don't want to try and, we're not trying to crush anything, so it just needs to be nipped up. But it doesn't need to be crazy tight. I think this one's going to be a 2.5 mil. Yep. And then we should be able to refit our lower pin. So we're not going to be using the upper pins on these. And you just tighten the original pin back in, and it will screw into the nylon on the end. And that is really nice looking. So I don't believe we need thread lock on the steering. Seems like it's got a nut on the end of it. So if we screw the original screw back in to the new arm, and then we get the original nut, we should just be able to put that on the back of the threads. So let's flip it over and have a look at what it's doing. Not sure if it's trying to cross thread or if it's just a little bit tight. No, it just looks like it's a little tight. So we tighten that up. Right, now we're gonna need to get that bearing back in because it decided it didn't want to stay. So if you line the pin back up and just make sure it's flush at both sides, and then we're going to want to tighten our little hex head up. Because we don't want that coming out. And there we have some really nice anodized hub and hub carrier. So let's get the wheel back on. Right, and then all we're going to do is repeat it for the opposite side. So let's show you how the back ones go on, because the rear ones are slightly different. So I'm going to start by undoing one of the rear wheels. So the rear hubs, these look very different but don't come with any other screws, which is going to be interesting, because these do come, so you get a set of hubs, but we also get a bunch of tiny little grub screws, and there's a whole bunch of threaded holes in the back, which I find slightly strange, but let's start stripping it down and see why we get them. And you don't get any bearings with the rears either. I find it a bit weird that they give you bearings with the front ones and they're the exact same size as the stock bearings, but we don't seem to get any bearings with the rear. So that's this top pin out, and before I slide this all the way out, I'm just going to drop the pin out and the hub off. Now that one really loose. So we're going to start by matching up which one we need. So it looks like it's going to be that one. So if we just pop the original bearings out, so as bearings are going to sit in this, just make sure they popped all the way in, and put one as drive shaft in. So we have got spacers for grub screws in back here, but I just want to see if that's going to fit with this pin, because I can't see why you would want to tighten the hub up to the pin, because it's going to spin constantly. Yeah, so there's no play in it. Not really sure if that's in case you want to swap it for a pin that screws on either side. so you can fix it in position rather than using the shim or spacer. Quite possibly that's the way they intend you to use it. But I think the only thing we're going to have a problem with is, unlike the front, they've not given us another screw for this. So unless we can screw that in, it's not threaded in either side. And it doesn't look like either side is bigger or smaller. We're going to have to get us send some nuts and bolts. So you're going to want 21mm M2 bolt, and you're going to need a nut to put on the back of it. So yeah, these parts do fit, but it's quite a lot of work to get them to fit. They do look nice. I wouldn't say they're the best quality aluminium either. They look nice, but I think that's about it. And these are all sold under the GTB brand. And to be totally honest, don't think I'd recommend them. Certainly not for a beginner. As long as you've got lots of nuts and bolts and you don't mind modifying parts, they are cheap enough for a full kit, but they do require quite a lot of work to get them to fit. But I'll crack on and get the rest of the parts fitted, and then we'll wrap this one up. Right, so conclusion time. These are sold under the GTB branding. I wouldn't say the quality of aluminium is incredibly high. They seem very soft. They're very easy to mark. I don't think they'd take much of a hit, so on a basher vehicle or an off-road buggy would definitely be a no. Should serve purpose on this because it's on-road, and I just wanted to get a bit more weight lower down on it. The front top arms was a pain in the backside because they don't come with the proper fastenings to accept the adjustable tie rods, so they were an absolute pain. The lower front arms didn't come with the proper screws for the shocks or the sway bar. The front hubs did come with the correct screws and a set of bearings, so that's a bonus. So we get a set of bearings, and they look reasonable quality bearings. They feel nice and smooth, and they're not rusty or anything. They are covered in grease. So the hubs and everything fitted right on the front and did come with the screws. The rear lower arms didn't come with the screws for the sway bar or the shocks. They didn't come with the screw that you need for the top of the tie bar mount, so you'll have to get yourself a nut and bolt for that. Overall, once they fitted, quite nice. There's no play in them at all, so yeah, they're gonna tighten up the steering. Would I advise them? Certainly not for a beginner, and be aware that you're probably going to be hunting around for nuts, bolts, and the tolerance on these rear hubs. I had to try and pry the top apart just to get the olive to go in, so that were a bit off. But the overall look of them and how they feel on the actual RC, no binding or anything, no play. So yeah, once they fitted, they're great. As I say,
For an on-road vehicle, yes, I think you'll be fine running these. If you're like me and you just want to get some weight further down and take a bit of play out of plastic, wouldn't fit them on an off-road vehicle. I don't think they'd last 2 minutes jumping. They'd just feel soft metal, soft aluminium. But hopefully that'll help some of you out and give you an insight on how to change the suspension out and everything on the GT2 VE. I believe it'll be roughly the same on the Nitro one as well. I think it's very, very similar suspension, if not exactly the same. But thanks again for watching WTF Rc Cars. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll catch you guys again in the next one.